Now the Steelers season is over. The big question that everyone's going to be asking every single day is Matt Canada still a coach at the offensive coordinator position for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Joining me to talk about that is Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. We'll talk about that and my Stars and Skulls grades for the final game of the Steelers season. It's going to be a fun episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoy it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. All you have to do to play Prize Picks is pick 2 to 5 players. And if you get their projections right, whether you just all that you have to do is just say more or less than the projected stat that Prize Picks give you. You guess right on more or less, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Gentlemen, as I said earlier, it's Alan Saunders back on the show. Alan, Steelers Now. Alan, there's that sense that's like, you know, you like more football to cover sometimes, but you're also sometimes happy that you don't have to travel anymore and that you can kind of just step back a little bit as a reporter. What more are you feeling right now?
It's the last day of school. I mean, I think that's it, right? It's just like, hey, man, it doesn't matter if you got an A or you got an F and you're happy about it being over. Or you're not like, hey, summertime, except it's 36 degrees outside. But, you know, it is. And the other thing I feel like as a reporter, just me personally, is that I do not like the daily grind, but I love the like changing of the seasons. I love just being able to like put everything from the last 6 months in a box, shove it under a table over here somewhere, like down there, and put a new credential on the wall and be like, all right, draft time. Let's go. Like free agency. Let's get into it. I like that part of this job a lot. So for me, you know, like I hope the Steelers like I don't have any. I'm not like I'm rooting against them, but I'm ready to go with this transition. I'm energized. I'm excited about covering the offseason.
I feel you on that. And there is a sense of like, you know, the change of pace of what's going to happen. But a lot of people want a big change of pace for the offense next season. And of course, the questions about Matt Canada come pouring in. There were questions to Mike Tomlin saying he's not going to get into that. He's just basically kind of brushed it off, as we knew he would. He's not a guy that's going to open up his inner sanctum to the outside media about how he's actually making the decision. Then, you know, there were players that talked about it. Najee Harris, notably, standing up for Matt Canada, saying they believe in him. And, you know, when asked about, you know, the same plays, and I agree with this sentiment a lot. A lot of people are saying it's the same plays. And, oh, my God, it's the same plays. Matt Canada only has like 5 plays. Every team runs the same plays a lot. Like, it's the most over. This is what, when people say that, know that they do not know football. Whenever you hear someone say that person put an X on their Twitter profile, whoever they are, you don't know football if you complain about stuff like that.
Everybody runs the same plays.
Everybody.
And most of the plays that Canada ran a lot this year, like I swear to God, I saw, and I don't want to like, I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want to talk shit. But there was a cut up I saw on Twitter earlier this year. It's like, here's Matt Canada running the same play like 7 times in 6 games. And it was a pass concept, and it was completed for like 3 to 5 yards on like 5 of the 7. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't see the problem here.
The problem.
Call it a few more times. It appears to be working. Like everyone gets mad about the jet sweeps. Steelers wide receivers average. Well, I gotta get the final tally here because it was over 6 at one point. Let's see. Let's see where it finished. Steelers wide receivers running. Yeah, it's pretty good. Steven Sims, 5'4", Gunnar Olszewski, 4'9", Chase Claypool,
Wow.
6'9", George Pickens, 8. I
So
think the
these
wide
guys were
receivers running the
averaging.
ball did just fine. I think they should probably have called some more of those.
And again, and this is again, we are not the Matt Canada fan club here to say he's a great offensive coordinator or anything like that. Or he's the next Andy Reid.
Just
Or
be sensible with your critiques. Like
exactly.
That seems.
Don't repeat something that you heard someone just yell one time and you thought like, well, that makes sense. I don't know what else to be mad about. I'm just mad that the Steelers aren't scoring 30 points every week, and I'm going to pick on something.
The lack of points is a perfectly valid starting place. If you're looking for a place to start to criticize, I think that's a good place to start.
And they finally scored 28 points in a game where they won. They've only done that one other time in the last 2 years under Matt Canada, and I believe that was the Bears game. I want to say Bears or Seahawks. I might be mixing up my games last year, but of course, this is the only time they did it this year. And there was, and again, that there's legitimate criticism, but this is why I like to talk football with you. This is why the people that I bring on this show, they're people that I trust in their football knowledge, because anybody can look at the Steelers' points overall for the whole points for in the standings and say, that's bad. This is a bad offense. And you can point to it every week, but very few can point to the things that actually make it bad. And this is why, like, during the season, there's so many times, and I when I argue with fans, some people think that it's personal. It's not. I'm just trying to point things out. People are like, this is a bad play call. I'm like, no, it's not. George Pickens is wide open over here. Like this is where the ball needed to go. But this kind of stuff happens when you have a rookie quarterback in a young offense that doesn't have an identity, with an offensive line that's even when it gelled, it was still okay, and with, your number one receiver who can't catch a touchdown all year, your number two wide receiver is also a rookie. There's so much stuff that goes into what the problems are, and play calling wasn't as big as an issue as people made it out to be every single time. There were times there were times I disagreed with what's going on, but it was such an overblown issue at times that I think that's what's built up the mystique of the question, what's going to happen to Matt Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's really hard for, I think, people to kind of grasp is that, like, there's a lot to like about a lot of the Steelers offensive players. Obviously, like, I covered Kenny Pickett a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's going to be a great NFL quarterback, but he's certainly like an exciting young player, right? George Pickens, an extremely exciting young player. Deontay Johnson has some highs and lows, but the highs are very high. Like, he's incredible at separation, and you feel like you should be able to work him into an offense. And guys like Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris seem to be pretty productive. But, like, you look at the offense and you're like, okay, why aren't these guys better? And then you realize, like, no one I just talked about except for Deontay Johnson is beyond his second year in the NFL. The offensive lineman doesn't have a single guy of any pedigree whatsoever playing on it, and they're just kind of this, like, collection of spare parts that the Steelers smashed together.
Yep.
Like, there's some upside to the offense, but it's not a good NFL offense right now from a personnel standpoint. That's issue one. Now, you can say the job of the offensive coordinator is to maximize the talent available. I think it could be argued that Matt Canada did not necessarily do that at times.
I agree.
But it's not like he's the big problem. It's not like if you had, if you brought in Kliff Kingsbury at the beginning of the year and fired Matt Canada, that suddenly this is like a top 5 offense. Might they be like, I don't know, 13 instead of 16? Sure. But like that, like, he's not just going to magically transform this group of players into a bunch of all pros.
Exactly. And I think that's where people need to have realistic expectations. That being said, Alan, are the Steelers going to replace Matt Canada? Just your thoughts. I'm not asking you to reveal a source or be the all-knowing guy, but just your projection. Is he here next year?
No. No, I think that they will. I thought that they would.
Wait, you think that they will replace him?
Yeah, I thought more strongly that they would before I talked to Mike Tomlin today. I think he didn't really give any hints, but I think that they will. And I think it's very telling. the whole story. Okay, so Najee Harris very dramatically stands up for Matt Canada yesterday. Says, "Look, when the offense isn't going right, it's not his fault. It's our fault. Like the players aren't doing their jobs. Like the plays were called to put us in good positions to succeed, and like we failed or didn't, or we failed or succeeded on our own. It wasn't his fault." And I agree with everything Najee Harris said. And my problem is that it's the running back saying it, and this is at its heart, at its core, a running offense. It wants to run the ball. All of the things that you think about as sort of hallmarks or signature characteristics of a Matt Canada offense are a part of the running game. The jet sweeps, the shifts, the motions, all that is the running game. None of it does anything in the passing game. Okay. It's a running offense. You look at what he did in college with James Conner and Monty Ball and a couple of running quarterbacks, but it has never been a prolific passing offense. And the Steelers used their first round draft pick on Kenny Pickett. They want him to be their franchise quarterback of the future. And it seems to me that the best thing to do for Kenny Pickett's development would be to find an offensive coordinator that has had some success at the NFL level already in an offense that is more catered towards developing quarterback play. And so that's why I think they will move on. But, obviously I'm not 100% certain, but I think both things can be true. I think some players can think that Matt Canada did a pretty good job, and he also just turns out not to be the right guy going forward.
I want to talk to you about who might be the right guy, if there's any names out there. And a few names, of course, are popping up because it was Black Monday and everyone was talking about the coaches who were available. We'll talk about that in just a minute and get to our Stars and Skulls grades for the Steelers regular season finale, or in the season finale against the Browns. We'll do that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. So don't go anywhere. But first, we got to talk to you guys again about Prize Picks. Prize Picks, of course, is daily fantasy made easy. Why play daily fantasy games that are going to make you compete against thousands of people and always checking up against, making the ultimate lineup that has to be ultra perfect? Prize Pick doesn't make you do that. What Prize Picks does is say, hey, pick 2 to 5 players. And if you think you have a beat on their day in fantasy, here's a projection. The projection is this number. Do they get more or less than that number? You guess right on your picks, you can get up to 10 times your money. It's that easy. You could play it on your phone. You could play it on their website, prizepicks.com. It's such a great thing. You got to try it right now. And it's not just NFL games. They got NBA, NHL, college sports, so much more. Heck, if you bet that Georgia was going to beat the dog snot out of TCU, you probably would have won some money on Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com and you can sign up to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, all capital letters, all one word. Promo code Locked On Prize Picks or prizepicks.com. We're also brought to you today by TurboTax. TurboTax, go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. You can meet with an actual expert who are going to do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can, not do the taxes. But you can show your eyes things that are not taxes. You can unpack a moving box of not taxes. You can taste not taxes. You can sing a not taxes lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. Whatever it is, go to TurboTax so that you don't have to do taxes. And with TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can feel relaxed. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax right now and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting with Wow Expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Moving right along, when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan Saunders from SteelersNow.com, Chris Carter here, host of Locked On Steelers. Alan, I got to ask, is there a guy that the Steelers should seek out above all else if Matt Canada is indeed done? Because there's still a chance. They haven't said he's gone. And immediately, Steelers fans, they rush to whatever name floats out on Twitter for the day. At one point, it was Frank Reich when he was fired as head coach of the Colts. Then when Nathaniel Hackett was fired from the Broncos, he was the guy that was thought to be there. And then, of course, Monday, Kliff Kingsbury fired from the Cardinals. He's the offensive mind. So you got 3 head coaches that are supposed to be offensive-minded coaches that are out there in the pool. Are any of them the guys that you think can be the guy that construct the offense to help develop Kenny Pickett? Or is there someone else out there that we're not even talking about?
I think Frank Reich's a very good candidate. I think he has, the sort of proper understanding of what the Steelers are all about, pro offense. Like Kliff Kingsbury to me runs a college offense, and it can be effective in the NFL, but it's not what the Steelers want to run, right? They want to run like a pro style offense. I think Frank Reich is going to meet a sort of just sort of like a basic cultural fit when it comes to what he wants to do. I think he has a history with the Philadelphia Eagles, and Andy Weidel is obviously now the Steelers' assistant general manager, so there's some personal familiarity there. I think he's a very good fit. Does it have to be him? I don't think so. I think there are, some other options. Frank Reich really hasn't done what the Steelers need. He hasn't developed a quarterback on his own. I guess he had Carson Wentz very early in his career in Philadelphia, and you can sort of decide how that went. They did win a Super Bowl, obviously, but I don't know that you can point to that as some kind of great success. Pep Hamilton's a guy that's interesting with Lovie Smith getting fired.
That's another one, yeah,
for the job. I really like Pep Hamilton. Obviously, the Houston offense was atrocious though this year, and I just don't know if that's a poison pill for trying to hire him right now. But I mean, I think you look at what he did with Andrew Luck when he was a young quarterback. Hamilton was his offensive coordinator, and I think that's I can see some of the Kenny Pickett development curve there in a guy like Andrew Luck, and so maybe that's an option. But I don't think it needs to be this top of the banner hire. But I think the things that I would be looking for in a candidate that Matt Canada does not bring to the table is experience in a pass heavy offense and just someone that has done it at the NFL level. It is really hard to do things for the first time in the NFL as a team. Like when you have a rookie anything, whether that's a coach or a coordinator or a general manager, like your first time around the rodeo, usually you're not that good. The Steelers have a inexperienced offensive coordinator at the same time they have an inexperienced quarterback, and to me that's not a great marriage.
I feel you right there. And we just lost Alan for a second here. Don't know where he went. But I agree with him that he's not. There he is. Now he's back. I don't know what happened to you there, buddy.
The magic trick just disappeared for a minute.
Just disappeared real quick. It's fine. But no, I feel you. There needs to be part, and it needs to be a smart part. I think I agree. The key here is developing Kenny Pickett and finding someone that helps him find the answers in his game to become a better quarterback. So I think it'll be interesting. And Pep Hamilton's another interesting guy. I think Jim Caldwell is another guy that you could certainly call up and think about. But again, these are all names that we know. But there's going to be names that the Steelers are going to be hip to and be thinking about that I think the average layman won't know.
Hey, let me throw one more out there. If you watch this national championship game, Todd Monken has had 2 chances in NFL offensive coordinator, but neither of them very long. And for the dysfunctional Freddie Kitchen Browns, I don't know, I think you give him a Melgan on that. I love that Georgia offense. Stetson Bennett is not some kind of top notch.
Yeah, he's not Joe Burrow.
Right. And they're still doing really good things with him. So there's another one I can throw out there.
Absolutely. We'll keep a close eye on how this projects, and we'll see if some candidates become top of the market for the Steelers as time moves on. Also, the rumor that Brian Flores, not a rumor, it's confirmed, Brian Flores is what, the Steelers have been reached out to about Brian Flores, including the Cleveland Browns are in the mix there. So we'll see how that plays out with the Steelers. But it's time to do some stars and skulls real quick as we get to the rest of the show. As always, the stars and skulls grading rubric, like decals on the helmet: stars, good; skulls, bad. 1 star means you had a good play with a good day. 2 stars means you had a great play with a good day. 3 stars means you had an elite performance, top of the line. In reverse, 1 skull means you just had a bad play, never redeemed yourself. 2 skulls means you had a bad game as a whole. 3 skulls, all time terrible. Now, that being said, let's start with the bad ones. And I didn't have any 3 skulls or 2 skulls. I felt like there were a couple guys who were working on 2 and 3 skull games, but had some good pick-me-up moments that didn't even out their ledger, but made them more tolerable. Those guys were Deontay Johnson, Chukuma Okorafor, Devin Bush, Dan Moore Jr., and Mark Robinson. Deontay Johnson, he caught the 2-point conversion, and I think that was one of the things that kind of was a saving grace. But I mean, 10 targets, 2 catches, 38 yards. You got to be able to do better. If I'm the Steelers, I'm very much looking back at that contract this year and being like, what can we do about that?
I actually think the Steelers should be kind of okay with that contract. They didn't pay him market value, and they didn't give
This
up
is true
either. They insulated themselves pretty well. The other thing I'll say about Deontay Johnson's game was he had a huge catch on a third down on the first drive, 30 yards on a 3rd and 8 to get him down to the 2-yard line. Now, they didn't end up scoring, but that's not his fault. Get to the 2. Your offense should do it. Also had a DPI led the NFL in DPI against this season. And so I don't think Deontay Johnson's year was a problem for me. Obviously, that was a bad game. And just I think so much of the frustrating parts about Deontay Johnson are that the things that he gets wrong seem to be quite easily rectifiable. I mean, look, drops are going to happen. They happen for every receiver. If you look at the numbers, his drops are not extraordinary or unusual in any way. I think people just pick on him because he's got a reputation. But the running backwards thing, I don't know where that came from, but it's got to go. And this is 2 now where it's I don't know. Do you call that a drop or whatever, or not being able to secure the football or a fumble, or he's got to be smarter if he's going to operate over the middle, like he likes to, because he can get open. But not a good performance from Deontay. I think you missed a 3 skull though. Cleat Blakeman, can we hand out some skulls to that officiating crew?
Oh my gosh,
that was the worst officiated game of the season.
That was terrible.
Just awful. It wasn't like it was. It did. I don't think it helped or hurt one team more than the other, but it was just horrible, and it needs mentioned.
I mean, you look at some of the calls in that game. Najee Harris definitely in the end zone, not called. Should have been challenged by the Steelers. Steelers could have helped that themselves there. Wasn't, and led to that fumble. Then the face mask on Deshaun Watson.
Face mask. What else are you watching?
I don't know how you missed that
4 officials whose job it is to essentially be looking at the line of scrimmage. Like, how did 0 of the 4 see that?
It is so bizarre to see something like that. And then there were so many other moments. I'm starting to blank on all the different ones. There was one time I saw George Pickens just held all the way up the field. The Cam Hayward penalty. I mean, just
it's brutal. This is absolutely brutal.
You're absolutely right. We don't need to go through all of it, but the referees were terrible. But who was good in this game? We'll go through our stars in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. So don't go anywhere. We did want to talk a little bit more about the coordinator position. So, but we got all our stars grades coming up. So we'll do that in just a minute here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about BetOnline, because BetOnline is your number 1 place to go for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including the NFL playoffs that are about to be underway, and the NBA and the NHL and all other sports available right now. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to these star grades here. We're going to start with 1 star, guys. I had a bunch here. I put in Najee Harris. The fumble was costly, but I felt like he made up for the fumble with his touchdown. He had a couple hard runs. Didn't feel like it was spectacular, but felt like it was solid. Minka Fitzpatrick, 10 tackles. No interceptions, but solid there. I meant to put this is my fault. I don't know why George Pickens on this list, because he's going to be later down the line. He got more than 1 star in this game. I put Steven Sims there, DeMarvin Leal, James Pierre and Cam Sutton, Presley Harvin. I actually thought he had some really good punts in this game. Chris Boswell also not missing field goals was nice for the Steelers. I felt like Kevin Dotson had some rough moments, but I also felt like he had some good moments in this game. Isaiah Loudermilk, I thought, was better up front. Miles Jack, I mean, he looked better than he has And I felt like that was the big contribution there. And then, of course, Derek Watt, he gets a touchdown for the Steelers. It seems like he was the 1 yard answer all season long for them. But those were my 1-star grades. Again, sans George Pickens on the list here, because I will be giving him a higher grade down the line.
It's a pretty solid list. I don't. It was an interesting game in that, like, the Steelers didn't have a ton, to me, of like dominance. It was just sort of like a collective, like they were just better than the Browns, and they just kind of, they were like 1% better than them all game, and they just kept taking advantage of that's like disparity in ability. So, like, to me, I think it was just a really good team win, and you have a lot of like pretty good performances when you do that. And I think you kind of captured that with that big long list of 1-star guys, where I just think, it's easy to have a pretty good game when you're just a little bit better than the guy on the other side. And
right,
I think the Steelers called a pretty good game, both Terrell Austin and Matt Canada, and put their players in good positions. And so I think that's pretty reflective of how the game went to me, is that you should have a whole bunch of guys on that list.
All right, so we're on the same page here. Now, this is where I think it could get interesting with the guys I gave the 2-star grades. My 2-star grades for the game. I put Kenny Pickett there, TJ Watt, Terrell Edmonds, Larry Ogunjobi, James Daniels, Levi Wallace, Connor Hayward, and Mason Cole. I felt Kenny Pickett early on, I thought he looked a little skittish, Alan, but I thought he really settled in. And part of me giving him this grade is timing, and sometimes he makes these plays. That first touchdown drive, the Steelers absolutely needed it. After the touchdown, there was a deflated sense, and how everything was playing out, lots of frustration. And if the Browns go into the half up 7-0, that's a whole different ball game. But you get that drive, the defense gets some time to breathe, you score a touchdown with a nice deep strike to George Pickens that was well-structured and well-read. And then the defense comes out, gets the turnover, and then you get another field goal. So then you go from down 7-0 to up 10-7 going into the half. That was why I gave Kenny 2 stars, even though, not supreme stats. But again, I think he finds ways in big moments to be a big player.
Yeah, and you look at, so they get down and then they answer. And then both times the defense gets them a turnover, they score, right?
Yep.
And to me, that's the game right there, is that Kenny Pickett didn't turn the ball over. Deshaun Watson did. And then when Deshaun Watson turned the ball over, Kenny Pickett made him pay for it. He was not statistically dominant, but he won him the game with those situational plays. And I absolutely agree. Look, no one's going to be happy with your quarterback having 100 and some passing yards. It's not good, but you win the game, and scored 28 points. Like, it's not like it was this horrible offensive performance. It was, the first quarter was rough. The first half of the second quarter was rough. But they found a footing and they found a way. And I think he just keeps getting better to me. I think that's the biggest thing as we finish out his rookie year. So I really just kept seeing improvements. Like, you put Connor Hayward on there, and I totally agree with Connor Hayward's inclusion. I thought he was awesome. Got thrust into a bigger role when Pat Freiermuth went down and really stepped up. But also the throw up the seam in the linebacker and the safety.
Oh my gosh.
Too, like, not enough people are talking about some of the throws that Kenny Pickett has made. Like, we're talking about the play and the clutch, and he's gritty, and it's great. That's who he is. But, like, look at some of the throws he's making in those moments too.
Yeah.
It's not just like, all guts. There's a lot of talent there that can be further tapped. If you look at the throw to Steven Sims against Baltimore, the throw to Pat Freiermuth rolling left against Baltimore, the throw to Najee Harris in the end zone against Baltimore, finding George Pickens in the end zone there, George Pickens in the end zone against the Raiders, that Connor Hayward seam route. I mean, these are high-level quarterback play kind of throws that you don't see from just everyone around the league. And I think people have a hard time looking at Kenny Pickett and saying, like, oh, he could be in the same conversation as guys like Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, people that we consider the top quarterbacks in the league. Okay, he has not shown that on like a consistent basis, but he has certainly shown the ability to do that time and time again. And if the Steelers can find a way to get more of that out of him going forward, I think it's a really good sign for his development. That was an incredible throw. And just I was floored.
And to me, that's back-to-back weeks where we've seen an incredible throw. The Steven Sims throw in the Ravens game to me was his best throw this season.
The Najee touchdown at the end of the
Absolutely.
game. I mean, just this is Chris Collinsworth. I know all the Steelers fans hate Chris Collinsworth. He said it on the broadcast. If Patrick Mahomes does that, we're talking about it like it's like end of the world play, like, oh my God, like put it in the Louvre. And yeah, we should be talking about it when Kenny Pickett made it too, because he's capable of doing some magic, and he's shown that.
Absolutely. So Kenny Pickett, one of my 2-star guys here. I gave James Daniels and Mason Cole 2 stars. I felt they played. Terrell Edmonds, I also thought stepped up. He had a nice breakup and a sack.
Much better than the week before with Ralph.
Yeah, because he struggled last week.
Yeah, I thought he was really good in coverage.
And I got to say, and this could be one of the biggest regrets of the year. I felt like this was the most back we've seen TJ Watt all
100%.
season long.
100%.
And it kind of makes you say, man, if only they could have won one more so they could sneak in there and then TJ Watt can just wreck somebody's world, because we've seen them do it. Not that they were definitely going to beat the Chiefs or the Bills or whoever they'd match up with in the playoffs, but the idea that, man, like if they had just gotten that one, like that team, just they caught him at the right moment, and TJ Watt made one of those ridiculous plays, then all of a sudden the team believes and the offense gets, like, you can see that happening. And I do feel like TJ Watt got back there. And even though it's disappointing for that, I think it's a very good sign that he'll be back next year and be back at full strength. And it won't be a question of like, well, is he just going to play the rest of his career reduced by a significant rate? So all that being said, let's get to our 3-star guys. I got 4 of them for you. DeMonte KZ, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, and George Pickens. I felt that KZ's interception was beautiful. It was well read, just timed over the middle. He was solid all game. They played him for 30 snaps. He played very well. Cam Hayward, I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick got the team MVP, but man, he had some MVP-like performances down the stretch here in this game. You go back and you look at this game, 2 sacks and had one robbed of him. With the penalty that he suffered, 8 tackles in this game. Alex Highsmith, 2.5 sacks, 8 tackles, 4 run stuffs. If you look at Pro Football Focus, and then George Pickens, just 3 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. At live, I didn't think he got the toe tap in. When I saw the replay, I was like, oh, he got the toe tap in, and they didn't give it to him. Either way, I thought that he had a phenomenal game with getting open, winning the 50-50 balls, and giving the Steelers a shot. Alan, any problem with my 3 stars here?
Nope. George Pickens is an alien. I'm waiting for
He's an
Will
alien
to show up and like just like unzip him and like a green man comes out. And, yeah, he's
like, that makes sense.
He's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. I really just can't describe. Like I've seen guys that can do that, but never like just so effortlessly. I think that's the thing that really just doesn't even look like he's trying that hard to do some stuff that we barely ever see. Love Cam Hayward. He was a monster. Past TJ Watt in career sacks. How about that? I just think, man, I'm 37. No, that's a lie. I'm 39.
How'd you mess up your age?
After you're old. Doesn't matter what number it is. 39. Cam's 30, gonna be 34. And I just I think about like 30, man, I was like a dad already, and I was like, already doing like I want to sit on my couch thing, and like he keeps getting better. He's getting better. He's so good. I don't think he was as consistent this year as he was last year, but when he was on, he played the best football of his career at 33 3/4 years old. Is unbelievable. It's just it's really something that you don't ever see, and just what a year for him, and I hope he gets all pro. It's probably going to be between him and Quinnen Williams. I assume Chris Jones is going to get the first spot from the AFC. It'll probably be between Cam and Quinnen Williams for the second one, but I think he's earned it. I'd vote for him if I had one.
I feel you on that. Cam Hayward, not just a great person, but he is a great player. Everyone, it is easy to talk about how nice of a person Cam is, but it is amazing how he flips a switch and he just becomes a demon on the football field. And Alex Highsmith, I felt like he finished a really strong season with a really strong finish. I also got to say this. and I think enough people have addressed this that there's finally like a counterbalance of it on the internet. But the people who tried to make something of the CPR celebration where someone, I'm not sure who, was giving CPR to Alex Highsmith after his last sack in the game, please get a life. Like, I get that the timing of the look of it is, oh, that's a bad look with Damar Hamlin, but like, they've been doing that celebration all season. The Bengals did the celebration for a touchdown. There's multiple people who give football CPR. It is a simple thing. And listen, could they have not done it? Sure. But that was not like we're making fun of Damar Hamlin. That's a common thing that football people have been doing for decades.
Yeah, it was DeMarvin Leal, a young guy that was over there and expressed some regret today, and I think we can leave it at that it was just a bad timing, but
it wasn't malicious. It wasn't
clearly.
Yeah. But all that being said, strong finishes from a lot of guys. For those who are wondering, I will be doing a full tally of all the stars and all the skulls per position as we get throughout this offseason. Not right away. We're going to take some time this week.
And the one bus ticket for Marcus Allen. But in all seriousness, we will be putting that together. I'll be doing it like a position type of thing where we get to talk more in depth about each group and where we kind of find them just on their grades for the whole year. Because I also did a lot of retro grades after, like looking back and saying, no, I actually want to give this guy this after I watched a little bit more film on each game. But all in all, I think that the Steelers, they had a lot of positive upturns for the end of the year. The question, I think, Alan, will be which guys that made the biggest upturns are guys that have the ceilings that you want to hold on to versus guys that made good upturns, but you can do better by simply getting a guy in the draft. I think the offensive line is the place where there's a real question. Like, I can absolutely say that every single offensive lineman played a lot better at the end of the season than they did at the beginning of the season. I think some of those guys certainly have deserved the right to continue on it. But I just think still, overall, it is a unit that compared to its peers lacks talent and is a prime place for this team to upgrade. And I think there are going to be some difficult those guys have played themselves into difficult decisions. I don't know that they've played themselves into 5 jobs for next year, but they've at least made it difficult to cut them, right? I think that like it went from, God, this offensive line's a mess, anything could be better than this, to like, if it's not the first round pick,
it's not terrible,
right? Like, doesn't have to be, like, oh, Joey Porter Jr.'s there. Oh, Jordan Addison's there. Oh,
right.
One of these top D tackles, Jalen Carter's falling. Oh, let's go get him. I think they have some options now.
And that's, I think, a big part of it. The Steelers, I think there's been plenty of years where the Steelers have abandoned best player available and have gone with, a certain position. And I think that if offensive line was really bad, they might have put themselves in that position this year. But I think with the way that they've played up, they're in a position where, linebacker can be on the table, cornerback can be on the table, defensive line can be on the table. I know a lot of people are going to say Jordan Addison, but I don't think the first thing this team needs is a wide receiver. They need to get stronger up front on both sides of the ball. They need to get a playmaker at linebacker. They need to get a shutdown corner. You accomplish 2 out of those 4 in this offseason through the draft, I think you're doing really well with yourself next year, because you also have some free agency opportunities to replenish all of those positions.
That being said, that Broderick Jones looked really good in that national championship game, and I would just like to take him and move him straight onto the Steelers offense.
Plop him over there. Actually, I believe it was Trevor Sikema I think he did his first mock draft, and he had Broderick Jones, Georgia offensive tackle, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round. I think that would be a very interesting fit for the Steelers, because also I think he's a right tackle, and if he's at right tackle, then you do the thing that I think that they should have been doing for a long time and move Chakuma Okorafor to left.
3 years, yeah.
I don't understand what the hesitation has been there. Dan Moore Jr. is more of a run blocker, anyways. But either way, I think that this team would happily take a Broderick Jones the way that he's played for Georgia this season. If he can be that kind of a physical dominant force, I think it changes a lot about what you could do with the run game. It's another willing protector for Kenny Pickett. And if the Steelers, I think they're going to be a team that needs to win in the trenches. That you got to get guys who can win in the trenches consistently. We'll have a lot of time to talk about who they should be looking at in the NFL draft. So stick with us here throughout the offseason. Stick with Alan Saunders. They do a great job at SteelersNow.com covering everything. They were in the locker room for the final day as he said, last day of school type of vibes. Alan, what's some key things that you want people to check out that you guys are working on?
I've got a story tomorrow on Mike Tomlin's streak of non-losing seasons, why it does matter and why it doesn't matter. And I'm sure everyone will have an opinion about that, as they usually do. Working on something on Connor Hayward's season. And I think Nick Faribault is writing about Pat Meyer, who, since we were just talking about the Steelers offensive line, I think deserves a lot of credit for that unit turning around. And
absolutely,
I think maybe for the first time since Mike Munchak was here, the Steelers should feel pretty good about who their offensive line coach is.
Absolutely. I've been singing his praises for months on this show. I think Pat Meyer's done a phenomenal job, and is a guy the Steelers need to hold on to for some time as they rebuild this offensive line. We'll talk about that all that day. Thanks so much, Alan, for coming on. Check out their work at SteelersNow.com. I'm Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. You can check out this show, Locked On Steelers, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, like the video if you saw it. Enjoy, subscribe to the YouTube channel to enjoy all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. You can also read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where I cover Pitt athletics, covered a community event about Damar Hamlin, and actually spoke to a couple Steelers who attended the event out of solidarity, along with a lot of community members. It was a beautiful event honoring Damar Hamlin on a day where it was announced he was discharged from the Cincinnati hospital and was moved back to Buffalo for him to continue his recovery. Very good news for the young Pittsburgh kid who's been fighting for his life for the past week, and so glad to hear that news. Absolutely. We'll have a lot more here. Absolutely, the heart from Alan there. We'll have a lot more here as the week goes on. More coming on the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stay tuned, Steelers fans. We got a lot coming your way.